Hey everyone. I learned a couple of things over the last few days around how to process some data in an Excel spreadsheet using RPA, so I wanted to share that with you. So as you can see on the left here, I have the RPA designer. On the right, I have a spreadsheet with some dummy data in it. So basically, A to Z is the data that I want to process, and this field over here is basically going to tell me if it's 0, I want to process that data. If it's 1, it's already been processed. So I want to show you a couple of ways to do this that actually saves me a whole bunch of time, and it's a few little uh, nice little kind of, I guess you could say, best practices to speed things up a little bit. So first thing is I have this open workbook action, so it just basically opens this particular spreadsheet. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this over to this particular cell here. Okay, that's going to be my starting off point, so I can do things like select cell, right? New selection, perfect. So that's basically I want to start off with A2. Now, this is a way to actually process all the data. So now that I've got A2, I want to go into flow. I want to add, oops, not flow, loops, and I want to add a loop. And I don't know how many times I'm going to be doing this. Now, there's a number of ways you can do this. You can query this spreadsheet and pull out all the values, process a list. I'm going to do this kind of like the slow way or the old-fashioned way. So I'm going to say run this loop forever. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to first on the right here, I'm going to create a variable called bool continue, change it into a boolean or true false, and set the value to true. Okay. Now, under loops, oops, not under loops, under flow, I'm going to add an if action, and I'm going to say if that continue is equal to false. In here, I'm going to add an exit loop action. Right. So that means somewhere inside this loop, I'm going to have to set this value to false. All right. So let's go down to here. Okay, now we can start doing some processing. So we're at A2. We want to do something. So I'm going to just add a note here. I'm going to say do some work with the current data. All right. This little note that reminds me to add some logic into here. Okay, what I want to do is get the value. So get the value from the current cell. So I'm going to just drag this onto here. And you can see how it picks exact cell. Click on this little arrow here, change it to current cell, and then I'm going to do a get value. So I'm going to get some text back. I'm going to create a variable. We'll just call it text data to process. Right, you can see it automatically gets added down here. So it's going to get the value into there. Now I'm going to have another if action. So I'm going to basically check, is it empty? Right, so if text data to process, and there should be like is blank. There we go. Is blank. I want to set that variable that says stop, don't continue with the loop. So I'm going to use a set variable action. Be continue or boolean continue, and I'm going to set that to false. Okay. Now the one thing I'm missing from here is I'm actually not moving to the next value, right? So what I'm saying is go in here, select A2, which happens to be an A. It's going to go through here. It's going to get the value, and it's going to say, actually, I'm going to move this down a little bit because I'll show you in a moment. So I'm getting the value, and I'm checking if it's blank. If it's blank, exit out of the loop. If it's not blank, I want to do some work. So let's go back into this if. We're going to check this box here called include else. And we're going to put that note in there. That note tells me this is where I need to do, whatever logic I need to do. Also, what I need to do in here is I need to move the selection down one. So let's go here. Again, I'm going to change it to current cell instead of exact cell. And I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to say move selection. And I'm going to move one row down. Okay, that's pretty much it. So this is the logic to go through essentially manually each one of these rows. So let's go up here and all right. So there's the loop. I'm going to speed this up a little bit and let's see it go. All right, so you can see, and yeah, it's going through there. Oops, yep, it's going through. You can see it actually on the top here in Excel, what row it's currently at, A5, A6, etc. Let's see if I can speed it up a little bit more. All right, so it's going to go through all these values in this particular list. Okay, now here's the downside to this, right? I'm going to, of course, add some logic into here in the future and where the note is to actually process the data. And if it successfully processes it or completes it, it's going to go and set this process flag to 1, right? At the moment, my bot flow is not looking at that flag at all. It's just processing the data regardless of whether it's already done it before or not. Okay, so I'm going to show you in a moment how we can actually go and really kind of minimize how much work we have to do and not go through the same work we've already done. All right, what are we up to here? We're up to 822, so we're going to be going up to 827, and then we should exit out of the loop. 24, 25, 26, and this should be the last one here, and ooh, there we go. It jumped out of it. All right, perfect. So it's finished. Okay, so great. Now, how do we look at this particular field here? All right, so I'm going to copy this move selection. I'm going to copy this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it. So this is essentially the last action that we want to do. We want to jump back to the next row. So I'm going to add another note in here. Oops. I'm going to say move to next row of data to process. Okay, let's move that up one. All right, so that's going to be the last move I need to make. But here, instead of moving down one, I'm going to move right one. So let's close this. I'll turn that off. I'm going to move right one. Okay, and again, I'm going to grab this, move it over here. I'm going to select current cell. I'm going to get value. And let's go and create another variable here. I'll just make it a number. Is processed. All right, so now we have a is processed variable that should have, so now we have the data, the actual value, and we have is processed. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit of logic here. So again, do some work. Not quite the place I want it. I'm going to go down here. Now that I have both values, I need to actually check to see if I need to process this data. So I add an if action, go over here, is processed. I'm going to say if it's equal to 0, put my note in there, and that's where I need to put my logic. Right? So now we have a little bit of logic that says if we see a 1, don't do anything. If we see a 0, go into this if statement and actually run the logic in there. So let's save that. We'll just do process filtered data. All right. So this is going to be a longer video than I've usually done. We're already at about 9.5 minutes. Okay. So let's go and do something like this. We'll just add a few ones here, right? Save that. And I'm going to go back to the top here, and I'm going to go here. We're already there, and click on this. Oops. See, my bot flow finished. Why did it finish? Because at the very bottom of this bot flow, Well, actually, right there, we're setting B continue to false. I need to reset that up here. So let's add quick action at the top here. That is data set variable. We're going to set the B continue to true. There we go. Now it should be better. Save that. Oh, I'm going to stop this. Okay, so here's what happened. I've moved my selection to the right one, so I'm now at the process column. I go down here because it's set to 0. I'm going to do some work, and then I'm moving 1 down. Well, the problem with moving 1 down, I'm still in the process column. So what we want to do is move down 1 and left 1. Right? So essentially what that means is we're going to, if we're over here, we want to move down 1 and left 1 and go to the next row. All right, so let's go back here, and I'm going to manually click this. So here you can see we're at B2 at the moment. I'm going to double click on this, and now we're at 8.3. So it's actually went from down here and across, right? So down 1 and left 1. Now this one, let's actually do this. We're going to get the value, and if I actually move this across a little bit, let's do this. This will give you a view of the current variables. You can see currently the value to process is B. I'm going to go in here, move the selection. I'm going to get the value. It's B. Let's go down. There you go. Now we're at C. And all of a sudden now, because we're at C, that's a 1. You can see the 1 right there. So this has already been processed, which means if I go down here, it's not going to meet this condition. So we're going to just jump over that. We're not going to go into the if condition here and process the data. Okay, so this is one way to go through this. The problem with this way is that it's still going through every single row. It's not necessarily processing the data. So it's not doing the logic that's in here, but it's still going through each of these values. So it is a little bit slower than you would hope it to be. So this is how how you kind of get around this. In Excel on the top here on the bar, there's a filter, right? So you can see you can actually filter the data. And what that does is gives you a little box at the top here where you can say, I want to filter this particular data. Okay, so you can see at the top here where you've got the little filter button. I'm going to click on this drop down, and you can see here it gives you the unique values where you can filter on. So I'm going to filter on, just show me all the ones that are zeros, right? So if I click on OK, you'll see this turns blue, and you'll see a few rows missing here because they're already set to 1, right? So the row 4 here, the data C, because it was a 1, it's now hidden from view. Okay, great. I'm going to click on save. Right. Again, just want to give you guys an idea. If you run through this, the way this particular bot flow is built, because it's moving from cells, from next cell to next cell to next cell, it ignores the filter. Right? It does not understand the filters when you're just moving from cell to cell, because behind the scenes it's actually just talking to Excel. So just go start at cell A1 and move to the next cell, and move to the next cell, and move to the next cell, right? Next row, etc. So it's going through the unfiltered data. I want to go through the actual filtered data. So we're going to make a few little changes in here. So first of all, at the very beginning, where we set the cell to A2, because we want to process the actual data first, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change it from select cell A2 to A1. So it's going to select the column header. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I'm actually going to move this selector over here. In a moment, you'll see a targets drop down. Right, so you can see targets, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click on workbook, and I'm going to, oops, I think I picked the wrong one. Sorry, I did not mean workbook. I meant Excel. Let's try that again. So what we'll do is under targets, we're going to select Excel. right? So the actual application, and we're going to send value. And right here, click on the little expression builder and click on keyboard. And I'm going to click on the down button. So this is going to send a down keyboard press. Click on OK. The next thing to note is the speed. I set this to very slow, just because if you do multiple keystrokes, if you do it too quickly, it doesn't get sent. It doesn't successfully do it. So when it comes to keystrokes, I like to send them at a slow speed. So I'm going to do that. So again, you can see A1 is currently selected. I'm going to double click on this send value just to see what happens. It moved to A2. Okay, great. Now we can still do the kind of move selection, to the right to get the values, etc. But over here, instead of moving selections by like going down one, we're going to send another one of these keystrokes. I'm going to paste that in here. And a quick change, I'm going to go into move selection, and instead of going down one, I'm just going to go left one. So essentially what that means is I'm over here. I want to send a left. I want to move the selection one row to the left, or one column to the left, sorry, and then I want to do a keystroke, which is a down arrow. The reason why we're doing keystrokes is because keystrokes recognize filtered data. So you can see here, if I go up, down, it doesn't go into 4, it goes from 3 to 5. Okay, so that makes it a little bit faster. Now, the other thing that I would add to the end of this particular process is, let's move my little selector here, is I would drag this to here again. And let's go there, and let's do workbook. And I think I did it again. This is what happens when you do live demos. Let's try this again. Let's go Excel. And yep, I am clicking on the wrong one. That's fine. Let's go here. Okay, we're going to click on the little filter thing here. Okay, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to click on refresh filter. That's going to be the last thing I do. And then, of course, the last thing I really want to do is I want to go into, let's just double check this. Go drag this. Now this time I will go into workbook. Go down here, I'm going to save it. I'm going to existing file. Okay, so what we're doing here, the reason why I did this is because as this particular bot flow runs, it's going to potentially process some data. So let's say it processed K and it set that to 1. If I do this right now, if I go 1, notice how it's still there, even though the filter is on. So you need to refresh the filter so that it hides it, right? So if I go over here on the left here and I double click on refresh filter, watch this particular field. If I double click on it, boom, it disappeared. Right? So this would mean, and then of course I'm going to go and save my workbook, and then next time this bot flow runs, it's going to open this up again and have the latest and greatest. It's going to process this data. Some of it is going to complete, and then it'll set the flag, and then it'll reset it. Now, if you look at this, let's just do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So there's now 24, 23, 24, oops, 23 records that are visible here. Now my bot flow only needs to process 23 records. If I go like this, let's do a whole bunch and click on refresh filter. Okay, now you can see we only have 6 records left, right? It's going to be a lot faster for my bot flow to actually process 6 values or 6 records than it is to process 26. So let's actually run this. Let's see how well it goes. Right, so you can see it's now processing some data. It's going through some stuff. Yep, boom, it just did I need to process some data there. I need to process some data there. And you can actually follow up here where we're at. We're now at A5. We should go to A6 in a moment. We'll go 26 because we don't need to process all the other data. Go through 27. We'll process some data for that one. And then we'll go in here, and now we're at 28, and we go, yep, no, we're done. And we are completed, and you'll get a little pop-up like this to say finished running time one time. Right, so you can see how quickly it did that compared to processing every single record in the spreadsheet. Right, now again, I can actually close this. Right, so it's now blank. If I was to open this up, you'll see it's got a subset of the data there, and it's going to just process that. So instead of going through each one of those, now of course there are faster ways of doing this as well. You could search the records in here, the values, and put them into a list and process a list. That's a little bit faster than going through, sending keystrokes and things like that. But just want to let you know that there are multiple ways of doing this, and there are ways of doing things a lot faster as well. So this is a small subset. This is 26 items. But if you're looking at doing 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 items that you need to process, whatever you can do to speed up that process, will definitely help. Right? And this is one way of doing it. Of course, another way would be to pass this off to a bunch of different bots to process this data, etc. You can definitely do that as well, but I just wanted to show you a nice way that I learned that you can actually filter on some data and really just end up processing a subset of data by just using keystrokes to move up and down records in Excel. Okay, I hope this helps. So when you guys start building these out, hopefully this will save you a little bit of time in design time, but also a lot of time in actually running these as well. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate you watching this video.